No worries. Hi everyone, this is Kemlyn Tom Bappy, Ting the Blue Mermaid, here in the amazing country of Singapore. We are here tonight at the Riverside. Hey, retake again, please. I'm like, what? Where am I? I'm like,
Riverside
where am I?
Hotel.
Yeah. Where am I? Okay.
I'm just gonna keep rolling
Damn. Okay, I'm gonna do it again. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, if Pedro, if you're seeing me,
No need Pedro, I will
Oh.
edit this one myself.
okay, thank you, Lucian. All right. Hello.
And then I'll send to Pedro.
You asshole.
You were saying.
Okay. Hi everyone. This is Kemlyn Ton Bappy, Ting the Blue Mermaid with Hugh's Blue World. We are here in Singapore tonight, and I have an exciting guest for you to meet. You've got to meet Steph Chan. We are in the Riverside Hotel at Robertson Quay, and I have Steph Chan here. Steph, tell us a little bit about who you are and what kind of art forms do you engage in.
Okay, so I'm a poet, spoken word poet, as well as a comedian, and it's interesting because I feel like in a lot of bios, a lot of people like to say, which I've also put in some bios, that I'm a writer and performer, because I perform all different kinds of things, but primarily I started out as a spoken word poet, and so I want to be true to that, so I'm going to say I'm a spoken word poet for these purposes. I also do spoken word is sort of my first foray into any kind of performing, any kind of art. As a kid, I always wanted to be a writer, and I kind of also had aspirations to be an actor as well. I was never chosen for anything in the drama club. So I started doing poetry in 2008 when I was like 20, going on 21. And I've been just doing poetry ever since in various countries I've lived in. I came back to Singapore in 2014 after living away for about 8 years, and kind of in a sort of hunger. It was a really exciting time to be a poet in Singapore because a lot of stuff in the scene was sort of like growing. People were starting workshops, Singlet Station was starting, Singapore Rimo was starting out that year. A lot of people were starting their own poetry nights. And then I realized that it's just like I was used to performing every night when I was living in London, or like at least 3 times a week before, and I still didn't quite have that much chances to perform, so I started doing stand-up comedy, and I also started doing storytelling, and so I ended up helping to run a storytelling night for a few years called the Singapore Story Slam. It's no longer around, but I realized that I really love like long form storytelling. I've been doing stand up again since 2014. And I also do burlesque and drag as well.
Yes!
Because I just like people looking at me under certain circumstances, while also being a very shy person who is not very good at like random conversations with random strangers. So I prefer like a distance, whether it's a stage or a microphone or layers of makeup.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. I want to know, how did you go into, what seminal experiences led you into this path? I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but do you have any like specific instances or details that you can share with us on what made you become this performer and this writer and expressive person?
There's definitely a few instances. Like one, I think the first time I gave a presentation in front of my class when I was like 16, I gave a book talk on one of my favorite books, and I realized most people are terrified of public speaking. I realized I thrived on it because again, I'm very shy. In everyday life, and I hate being center of attention, but now it's like I had an excuse to be a center of attention. People had no choice but to listen to me. So I really enjoyed that. My very first time performing on a stage, performing poetry on a stage that I had written, was in a poetry slam in Vancouver. I was living there for a few months. I always tell the story, but it was a poem that I had written. I'd spent about a few months writing. I just finished a poetry workshop in college, and it was about a roommate that I had, and I read it out, and for the first time I realized that people actually like laughing at like punchlines in the poem that I didn't think were that funny, and I realized I had the power to make people laugh. And then I ended up winning a slam at that poetry slam, and that was 2008. Came back to Singapore for the summer in 2010. Didn't really know if I was going to continue doing spoken word poetry, but again, I didn't have a lot to do that summer. Spent a lot of time writing poems, and I walked into that was Singapore's second ever National Poetry Slam, and walked into it and read stuff that I had like written on the train, stuff I'd worked on. I think there was like a 3-round thing, so I think the first 2 I had written. Spent many months doing. Did not expect to go into the 3rd round, and ended up writing a rant that I had written on a train, and I ended up winning the thing.
Yes!
And the prize was a trip to Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean to take part in the Indian Ocean Slam.
Wow!
And I was like, this is like imposter syndrome to the max. I was just glad that I did not know anyone in Singapore. So I was like, I should feel guilty, but I don't know these people. I feel like I'm taking away someone's opportunity.
Guilty, not guilty.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I don't know any of these people. I don't know the scene. I'm gonna take this as like whatever. And so I think that sort of forced me to like step up to the plate, and that's how I was like, okay, I'm gonna do whatever happens. I'm gonna have to represent Singapore in this. I'm gonna have to like up my game and show that I am worthy of this prize. And that's when I started. I was studying in London at the time, and I was like, that's when I started to like take spoken word more seriously. And again, super, super intimidated. There was amazing poets from basically, countries around the Indian Ocean. The Reunion Island is a part of technically owned part of France, so it's funded by the French government, who by the way, love to fund poetry and slam poetry events.
Oh, yes!
So they funded a whole poetry slam. People from all around Eastern Africa, Australia, India, Seychelles, Maldives, Botswana, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, South Africa. Everyone was there, and we just spent like an amazing 5 days just like goofing around, looking at volcanoes, traveling around, hanging out in each other's hotel rooms, and I was realized there's actually nothing really to be intimidated by. That we are all friends here. We're all poets. Everyone has all this stuff in common. We have all come from different scenes, but actually it's all very similar and stuff.
Yeah. And most of us who have done slam before, honestly, if you're on the same stage, you belong with each other. Honestly, oftentimes if you don't win a slam, sometimes it's also the order, and just luck of the draw. But it's just really exciting because if you end up being like with the top 3 or the final round, you belong there.
The secret is a train.
But it's interesting because my own thing is that I am actually I have a weird issue about winning. I never feel like I want to win.
Really?
Yeah. And it's not like a self-sabotage thing, or maybe it is, but I always feel like it used to be a lot of slams. I always felt like I'm not going to win this because I don't deserve to win. And now it almost feels like I don't want to win this because I think someone else deserves to win because they haven't had as many opportunities as me, and I can use that. So generally, I am not a huge fan of the competitive nature of slams, but I do like that it pushes people. I do like how it makes people meet, how it lets people meet, how it forces people to up their game, that sort of thing. But yeah.
I wanted to let you know that when I first encountered your poetry, I actually researched quite a bit of your work on YouTube, because I was a new performing poet at that time. I'm not new to performance because I was a professional actor for about 10 years, but performing my own content was something new for me. And what I noticed was that a lot of what you slam on does not sound like is not always typical of what one might imagine slam poetry to be. You tend to inject quite a lot of humor in your work, and I thought it gave me permission to say, I know that this sounds really slam, but I'm going to write more authentically what I want to say to my audience, and because there are other voices around that doesn't always follow the band formula. So I really appreciate that. And so right now I'm going to invite you to read one of your poems, and that is also available on YouTube.
So this one is called "They Hang Witches Here, Don't They?" And it's a piece I really like. I'll let the piece speak for itself, and I'll talk about it later, maybe. They used to carry out public executions of women in your town, the ones they considered too strange or magical or dangerous to exist. It was the Witchcraft Act, 1604, used to convict and put 7 women to death in the 15th century between the villages of Hadley and Leigh-on-Sea in the region of Essex in southern England. Villages whose names once meant nothing to me. Names were no more than names of stations. That first evening I took that hour-long train ride alone from North London to your house in the suburbs of Southend-on-Sea. In my version, I introduced myself first. Tell you that I liked the way you moved at that open mic when you did that piece about Bowie. That was more incantation than spoken word. You tell me you have an unpublished novel about the witch hunts of Essex in the 15th century. In your version, you told me about that novel on 3 occasions before I finally agreed to read it. In your version, I was that one Chinese girl with the dreadlocks at the back of the open mic who showed up to all the poetry nights, whom you had kind of had a crush on. In our version, you tell me we could be space opera art terrorists if I could just come to your house, go to your room, and let you align my chakras for me. You mentioned something about hallucinogens. In our version, we agreed to meet up to write a poem together. That first night, I sat on your bed and you gave me a chemical too new to have a name in exchange for 3 hours of stories of a childhood tiptoeing around joss sticks, hungry ghosts, school toilet suicides, and that one girl in my class who got possessed. I figured if I kept you talking, we wouldn't have to do anything else. In your town, there used to be a special punishment for women who had too enlarged a sense of adventure. Accused them of causing poor harvests, killing cows and sheep, said they had extra nipples, threw them into the sea to see if they would float, said they buried them deep below the seabed, built churchyards around them. You told me how you sat in this churchyard once at midnight, placed a tab of acid under your lip, waited for them to tell you where they were buried, and then started to dig. I said, where I'm from, we don't fuck with spirits like that. I said, where I'm from, they call that asking for it. And as we peeked that first night, you explained the Hindu god Vishnu and Mayan numerology. You said you'd read the Bible, Quran, Torah back to back, and all you got out of that was violence and sex. And as for Jesus, what man in his right mind would turn 33, start a cult in a desert for a bunch of people who believed him when he told them that he was no less than a god? But at age 33, you were still drawing spirals and marker pen on walls of your bedroom in between writing unpublishable novels, in the shadow of your father, in the shadow of the most powerful city in the world, buying unnamed potions from strangers in a culture that told you that you were no less than a god. My mother thought you were sweet. You said, I think she has a crush on me. I said, nah. She says your hair's too messy. You said, that bitch. You could spend hours telling me about how living in a village in Thailand teaching English for a year made you take off your shoes automatically when you entered my house, but still called me irrational when I said you should call her auntie. But most days, though, were pure magic. We made a movie of ourselves, branding water guns in a warehouse, screamed poems over William Blake's tomb, tripped in the British Museum, flew through beachside backroads on bicycles, walked through cemeteries, turned London into our very own Holy Grail labyrinth, every street name a clue, every 200-year-old statue a mystery. We camped by the ruins of a haunted castle, tried to summon the ghost of a girl called Rhinex Sally, who had been sighted there in the 1830s. I said, I don't really know how I feel about this. She said, you said we had to tell her story. I don't remember, you said I showed you my world. Now show me yours. You said, tell me a legend from your country. So I let you push my head down, let you laugh when I gagged, and stitched together a half-recalled rumor of a Chinese woman who jumped from a fifth-story building wearing a red dress. You always suspected that those 15th century witches would have laughed at how safely you lived, how your 21st century spells would never really put you at risk, tell you your occult was just a glamorous fetish to wrap yourself in. And you would tell them how your bedroom contained enough powders and plants to get you locked in a cage at the Queen's pleasure for years. But you and I both knew the odds of you getting imprisoned as a nice white middle-class boy who got all his highs legal off the internet. Your body, your invisible force field of safety. So you had to dose yourself with chemicals, camped in haunted places, and laugh out loud at no trespassing signs to convince yourself that you were truly free. Me, on the other hand, my body just meant that all I had to do was show up at your house to look reckless and foolhardy. If they found my body in your garbage, what newspaper would believe that I was just really there to take chemicals and write poetry? We were both hungry for things we knew we shouldn't swallow, for things larger than yourselves, for things larger than ourselves. You wanted visions, talking spirits, Eastern wisdom, gods with how to spell names, prayers you could barely pronounce, one more girl to teach English to, one more girl to teach lines of poetry to. I wanted witches, Mayan calendars, ancient runes and side streets, my very own manic pixie dream quarter-life crisis, the possibility of magic between greasy fish and chip shops, something medieval, something profound. So we shackled our ankles together, drank our own potions, imagined we had wings, chanted spells to make us taste the myths in each other's mouths, held hands and threw ourselves into the ocean to find something at the bottom new and worth writing trilogies about. What we found instead, human flesh, writhing, kicking, screaming, trying not to drown, a sea too shallow to swim in, 1 part disappointment, 2 parts pride. Your last email to me calling me a hypocrite for shaving my head but still acting like such a girl, demanding payment for that one jumper of yours that I'd lost. But what did I expect? We both came from towns built on the bones of dead women. Towns built on half-forgotten stories, dug them up to make ourselves sound more interesting, kept listening long after we stopped caring, just a bit too stubborn to stop believing.
This town was built on the bones of dead women. I love this poem because it has so many different layers and perspectives. I mean, you were talking about a contemporary narrative. You were also making allusions to historical events. You were advocating for how women need better treatment. Oh, so many themes
And I realized this actually is a different version from the one I read at the other thing. Different because I just have a lot of drafts, and I just found this in my Google Drive and it's an older draft, and I realized I cut out a lot of stuff for my book, and that's what I was reading from in the other one. So you have a treat,
I
guys.
know, right?
This is different.
This is like
from
the more primal, the more
so.
raw version.
The author's cut.
Yes. So I know it was exciting to see you trying to decide how much to divulge, the process that you arrived at this poem. So now we get to hear that. Tell us the backstory of this poem.
So some of it's true for legal reasons. Some of it is not true. I won't say which parts are true or not true. So it's I'll say it's loosely based on someone I did meet at a poetry night, and I think I realized now that I was quite young then. It's funny because the person that I met, I am older than he was then, and right now all I'm thinking is if I went to I'm just glad I'm not in a position where I have to go to poetry nights to pick up 25-year-olds and bring them home and get into these weird situations with them. I think it was a thing of I got into it with my eyes open. I was like, okay, I know the start. Yeah, it was really just I got into this thing with another poet, and it was in the UK, and it's really interesting because in the UK at that time, this was 2012, 2013. there wasn't a lot of collaborations going on compared to Singapore. That was a big thing I noticed about the Singapore scene. There's a lot of collaborations, a lot of people writing in groups. So then I think because everyone lived kind of far away from each other, geography and all that, there wasn't a lot of collaboration. So I can't remember who suggested a collaboration, but we thought, okay, we're going to collaborate, we're going to do a piece together. And I think, yeah, he was like, he had like all these very strict rules. It was very controlling, and I was like also very determined, like, I'm probably not going to get involved with this person. At first I was like very scared. I was like going to this place. I was like, okay, what if he tries something on me?
Yeah.
Eventually, like, I think we hung out enough that then I was kind of like, you know what, I don't really care. Like, whatever happens, happens at this point. Like, I'm leaving soon anyway. But yeah, so we did end up writing a poem together. There is a video on the internet of it, and it was an interesting experience because we became like very close. And again, it was a whole thing of like, I think today we would probably call him an incel. I think, and I think I'm not sure what should I say. He never like the fact. I told him from the start. Yeah, I never wanted to be involved with him. I was seeing various other people, some of whom were poets, some of whom he met, but he could never get over that. But I don't regret it. I don't regret like having like various like weird adventures, and I am glad it ended up. I was like, whatever happens, it will make a good story and make a good poem, and it did. Okay, one like weird thing that happened. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. One interesting weird thing that happened that I did not mention in this poem was that we would perform this duo piece together. Maybe I have slight regrets about that because that was the same year that I won the UK Slam, and so I was like representing the UK in various things. And I feel like if I had really wanted to, I could have done a lot with that, but I just kind of ended up spending quite a bit of time just performing with him. Like together and doing this piece and kind of like sharing my my sets. He offered like sets to do, slots at poetry nights, and I would say, okay, can I split this with this person? And I mean, today I would never do that. And today I'm very like, I always get like very concerned when I see other people doing this, or trying to do this, and so. But yeah, there was one day when we performed this together, and I think he might have known a bit more about. I was like, he was probably more familiar with the poem because he was more used to like performing the poem. Oh no, he was more used to like memorizing. I'm a very lazy person when it comes to memorizing pieces, and so we were performing it together. It was a cool piece, and essentially after that, he told me that someone went up to him and said, "How did you teach her the words?"
No.
Yeah.
No.
I feel that this is also speaks to like the diversity and like the kind of like racism that still exists in London, in the UK. So.
I'm offended.
Yeah. That was the same night that I got like, okay, at that time I had like a shaved head, and I still got mistaken for like the one like Japanese girl who was like performing at the same night, and I was like,
that is unbelievable, and I am so sorry that happened to you.
It was a long time
but
ago.
Yet, what I'm so glad is that we captured the story here, because you know what, we still have work to do. So for those of you who don't think that, this is still a problem. More poems, you're going to hear more about those and from us. Yeah. All right. Besides being a poet, you are such an inspiration to many of us in Singapore and overseas, because you open up opportunities for others to have their voice shared. Tell us about your work as a producer.
So I've been hosting poetry nights since I think about 2010, 2011. When I was like a poet in London, I got asked by by another host who hosted a slam, and he asked me to come on board and host a show with him, and I was like terrified. I I maybe curated and hosted one or two other poetry readings, and like every time I was like terrified because I feel like I think I wasn't ready to take that step to like be in the center and or be responsible for stuff. But I think doing it as part of a group, I realized I really enjoyed curating and really enjoyed hosting as well. I was co-hosting, and it was like a lot of fun. I came back to Singapore, and there was a lot of new poetry nights coming up. There was a show called Destination Ink, which is now known as Dink. There was a show called Speak, which is in this place called the Home Club, which was this like really amazing like indie like dive place that had like garage music, all local bands, all like floors were black and sticky, which later turned into like an art bar, which later now is a sushi bar. It's around the corner, and so yeah, they asked me on board to host with them, and I realized actually this is like, I'm really like happy to host, and really felt like a real welcome, just like coming back and being asked to like help to be part of this show. Then I realized now that actually producing, I really do enjoy producing. I really get inspired by like seeing like new talent, seeing amazing talent, and just thinking like, who can I put together? Who can I give this opportunity to, and like, who needs to see this person?
Yes, and I want you guys to know that my very, very first spoken word event was a spoken word event in Singapore at the Mary Lion. I wasn't performing that night. In fact, I was just starting to think about joining an open mic, and when I found myself in Singapore, almost by accident because my father fell sick, when he was getting better, my parents said, "You go find something to do. You need a break." And I was so excited because I saw the advertisement for Spoken Word, and I went with one of my friends, and I was like, "This is what I was looking for." And then that's when after that I researched your YouTube videos, and I became really more confident. And when I went back to Arizona, I actually started going to one of the open mics there. So, and, I just want to thank Steph Chan for that, because I would not have really felt that confidence, if I didn't do that. And look at me. I mean, 3 years later, I have this whole strange world now because you were part of the inception. And that's why it was truly an honor to be, to recommend, write a letter of recommendation for you as the poet,
the young artist.
Yes, young artist. Because you do represent such a mover and changer in our Singapore community, but also around the world. So I want you to know that you make a difference.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, so I have another question for you. We have many emerging artists here and around the world. What advice would you give them?
I would say maybe figure out what your goals are, because I feel like, and it's something that I'm still like learning about, because I feel like, for me, like poetry, I'm not really, I guess I am emerging, but also not really. Some scenes I am, some senses I am, because I have one book out, but in other art forms, I feel like stand up and like drag and burlesque. I've been doing it for a while. I still feel very new to that. For myself, my biggest obstacle as an artist, as an emerging artist, has always been professional jealousy, and that's something I've written about. And I think something we don't like to talk about, but so I think it still manifests itself in all kinds of ways. And like, I don't really know any like group of friends in poetry or any other form that doesn't have it. Mm-hmm. And if anything, I almost feel like that's the part of like the arts and performing that I hate the most. It's very, very tempting to like wallow in it. It's very, very tempting for me to just feel, like what's the point of this if I don't do this as this thing. So for myself, I do think, in my experience, a lot of people do get burnt out because they feel they're not getting this. But I think on a deeper level, it feels they're not being appreciated. I think it's a sense of like not feeling, it feels like they're not being appreciated. It feels like people don't care enough about their art. And I think it's really easy to fall into that trap. So I think the important thing is to just remember why you do it and like what you want to achieve. And I think always have plans to like, I don't know, accept that like you may not achieve every single one of your goals. And just because someone else has achieved a different thing doesn't mean you need it necessarily. And it's something I thought I could escape. I think leaving different scenes. And honestly, when I was leaving the UK, like I was like very gripped by like jealousy, just feeling like, oh, I'm a foreigner, I'm not here, I don't have the right connections. I achieved this, but I still won't really like get like all the gigs I really want. Other people are like going faster than me. They're getting into like the right festivals and all that. So I came back to Singapore, and for a while it was like, oh yeah, this is great. Like I have more experience than a lot of people, but eventually it will catch up to you. So I think for me it's also a matter of just keeping an eye on like why you're doing this, keeping an eye on your goals. What do you want to achieve? And it's okay if those change. At some point you might realize actually these goals don't really mean a lot. Like you may think that, oh, I need to win this slam, need to win that slam, but is that really why you are writing poetry? Just to win this or that thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good check on ourselves and why do we create? Is it for something that, what is it about us? Can we be more intrinsically motivated and not as intrinsically dependent on affirmation?
Yeah.
Because that can really poison your craft and make you actually be very jaded and leave. And that's, it's part of what contributes to writer's block and then eventually poetry burnout or burnout in any craft. And so that applies to more than just poetry, but in any art form.
Yeah,
I believe.
and I think for myself, it's also I still suffer from it. I think no one's immune to it.
Yeah.
But I think for myself, what's been important and powerful for me is just remembering why I started writing and why I kept writing, even without all this like the awards, without all the like things to achieve, without all like the possible residencies. And I realize it's actually just because I really have fun. I really enjoy writing poems about writing like silly poems, writing funny poems that I want to read that about myself.
Right.
So, all self-obsessed.
Yes.
I want to read about myself.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I am so excited that you took the time to share your story with us and with our audiences. And would you, if there's one thing that you would like to say to this world, what would you say?
Many things who can't be boiled down to one. I'd say, I don't know, just like...
You can pick more than one,
everyone,
just speak to them.
Everyone, say, everyone is equal, deserving, and don't be an asshole.
Don't be an asshole. That's a very good one. So, last words. Hey everyone, I just want to thank Steph Chang. Thank you so much for bringing your voice to us, and it has truly been an honor to be with you. And you all out there, take care of yourselves. Remember that you have a voice, you have a way to express it as well. And the last word from Steph Chang, don't be an asshole.
And weird is spicy.
All right, we'll see you later. Take care, everyone.